The person starting on the leadership journey or the personal branding journey, where should they start? What is the first step they should take?
I think just figuring out where you want to go. What do you want your brand to look like? What is your personal definition of success? What's your vision? What's your mission? And a lot of it's just being you.
What are the mistakes dentists are making when they're buying equipment or an AI software?
I think a lot of times it's like anything in life.
What do you look for in a hire that never shows up on a resume?
I do probably interviewing a little unconventional than others.
What would you give to a clinic owner, one leadership habit every practice owner should start?
I think a lot of it is team first.
What if the thing holding your practice back is not your clinical skill or your marketing, but the team standing right beside you? My guest today has built winning teams in his entire career. This is Steve Craig, and he's about to change how you think about leadership. Most dentists were trained to treat patients, not to hire, coach, and lead a team to change. And yet, ask any thriving practice owner what actually makes or breaks them, and it's almost always come down to one thing: people. Steve Craig is an award winning leader in the dental and medical device world, a 7 time President's Club winner who's built number one teams more than once and coached dozens of people into the top 10% of the field. But what makes Steve different is not the trophies, it's his obsession with developing people, taking the complex and making it simple, and turning ordinary teams into extraordinary ones. So, today we are talking about leadership, equipment, and how to build a team that wins. Welcome, Steve, to the Dental Lens. We are very glad and honored to have you on the podcast today.
The honor is all mine. I appreciate the conversation we're going to have, and I look forward to it.
Steve, let us begin with your journey into dentistry, like how you first started your journey and how it has been till now.
Sure. I started my healthcare journey. Actually, I wanted to get into healthcare sales right out of college, and I found out pretty fast that they don't hire people into healthcare sales out of college. So everyone told me life insurance, payroll services, office equipment. So I took a job with an office equipment company. It's truly where I probably learned how to hire, develop, and train people because everybody there was hoping to be there for 6 to 12 months and move on. From there, I kind of went back to my original journey, which is I went into ophthalmology. So did everything there from a pharma rep to an OR rep to managed care rep to eventually leadership. And at that time, almost like the DSOs in dentistry, a lot of the ophthalmologists didn't want to go into the hospital setting, so they want to control their destiny with their own surgical centers. So we were working with groups to build out surgical centers. They could do their cataract, LASIK surgery, and all that. And that's truly where I got recruited into dentistry. So Johnson and Johnson was looking to expand their dental division, and they were looking to build in the DSO space. So myself and some others were recruited on a team to kind of build out the DSO space for the J&J dental division. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I got tapped on the shoulder and eventually moved into leadership. And how I got to my current place, my original CEO from my J&J days that decided to build up the DSO space. He left and went to another conglomerate in dentistry, Dentsply Sirona. And then he picked up the phone and called me one day and said, I just became the CEO of a company called Solmedics. We're getting ready to buy 4 other companies. We're going to be the only comprehensive end-to-end water solution organization in the world. And we have none of the organizations have any presence in the DSO space. Would you like to join the journey all over again? So I wouldn't say I was burnt out. I was probably more bored out. So it seemed pretty exciting to do that journey all over again. So for the first about year and a half, 2 years, that's myself and other individuals. What we did, we built out the DSO space for the organizations, and then from there got tapped on the shoulder to move back into leadership. So that's what I'm currently doing, vice president of sales for the Central District. So I'm pretty much managing the Central U.S. and Canada. We have everything from inside teams to outside teams calling the private practice space to enterprise teams calling in the DSO space. Then we have a surgical division, so we have a whole team calling on surgeons throughout the U.S. So that's primarily what I'm doing currently today, and that's kind of my healthcare journey.
That's really incredible, like starting from the bottom to the top. And I wanted to ask about this. Like, you have a bio line at dental end to end water enthusiast. Like, where does that come from?
It comes from when you really break down dentistry. I'd been in it for 20 years when my CEO picked up the phone and called me. I never really thought about dental water. But dental water is a number. You need water for every single instrument. It's the number one instrument in dentistry. You could have 2,000 people sit in the waiting room, but if you don't have a compressor, vacuum, power, and water, you can't treat anyone. So I believe that water probably is the dirty secret in dentistry, especially in the U.S. About 70% of practices don't test, shock, and treat their water lines. I'd like to see that change. When you're sitting in those chairs and having water, That's what we do. We work with water coming in the practice, through the patient, not the practice. Well, I'm a patient. I want to make sure that water is clean and effective for every procedure I've done, and I want to see it for every other patient that sits in a dental chair anywhere, making sure they have clean, proper use of water. And we also spend a lot of time, like I said, on the surgical side because they don't use saline for everything. A lot of pulpotomies and extractions are done with whatever water's in the chair, and obviously now the bloodstream of the patient, and that's where you see a lot of the water outbreaks happen because a lot of these procedures are done either on children or the elderly, in majority of the cases, which is already a immunocompromised patient. So we don't want to see that happen. So my goal is how do you kind of build that legacy to make sure we can change how water is viewed in a dental practice.
So what does exactly your company do? They like retreat the water in the dental clinic?
We do a lot of everything. So what we really specialize in is really making our solutions more simple. But at the end of the day, we're building comprehensive treatment plans. Everyone has a different gambling appetite. Everyone has a different financial appetite. But really, what we do is we hope the water coming in the practice is effective. The EPA mandates that it should be 500 column forming units or less, which is acceptable
Mhm.
drinking water coming in. But if it's not, we do sell devices with an organization called Stericel that can give treatable water coming in the practice. That same organization also sells products that test, shock, and treat water lines. From there is when the water starts to cross over the patient. So we have products by the organizations Dry Shield and Relief, which are isolation dentistry. Dry Shield is primarily for dentists and assistants, and Relief is primarily for hygienists. But that's where the water's crossing over the patient. So those devices, Dry Shield does two things. One, it will allow proper use for a dentist if they don't have enough assistants, which obviously we know there's staffing shortages everywhere in the world. It allows them to effectively do those procedures because it's a device that's going to hold back the cheek, the tongue, has a bite block on it. It's going to do the suction for them. But what our real true hope is that they actually have the amount of dental assistance they need, and now they can speed up and more effectively do the procedures they want to do. But the other thing it also does is control aerosols. Prior to COVID in dentistry, we thought if the patient presented, they don't have runny eyes, they're not sneezing, they look, like they're healthy, that everything's great because we thought all the aerosols came out of the patient. We've now realized through the CDC studies during COVID that 79% of the aerosols are coming out of the dental unit water lines. And with 70% not test, shock, and treating their water lines, it probably explains now why dentistry has a high rate with the teams themselves of eye infection, ear infection, upper respiratory infection, nasal infection, because unfortunately they're bringing in contaminated aerosols all day long, every day they work, and obviously they're in a practice a lot more than the patient's in a practice. So it will able to capture 96% of those aerosols. Then the patient, now the water's leaving the patient, it's exiting the building. So we have amalgam systems through a company called Solmetics that's going to make sure that that it's properly disposed of. We also have vacuum line cleaners. So we're making sure we're protecting the environment and the municipalities and the communities people live in to make sure when that water leaves a dental practice, it's going back in the best possible form it can to be repurposed and reused in another area. And then, like I said, we do have another whole arm to our arsenal is our surgical team. So we sell the Oxygen bone grafting products. But what we really do first with those groups of surgeons and specialists is making sure their water is good in that practice. Because, like I said, we're going to open up the bloodstream of that patient. They're not using saline all the time, and especially pulpotomies, extractions, socket preservation. They're using whatever water's in the chair. So we want to make sure that water's great. Then at that point, we can really work with them to make sure that they're using a product that is really going to help with clinical outcomes and really help with speed of process and give them really good bone to make sure those patients have the best experience. They're already experiencing some trauma. Now we need to make sure they have a great outcome. So that's a lot of what we do and a lot of what the 5 different organizations do.
That is incredible. I have never thought about the water so deeply till now. That about all the treatments coming and going outside. As you said, uh, going the water going out of the patient's mouth and the drainage is also as important to clean as the water coming into the patient. Thank you for
Absolutely.
elaborating on your products. Like I have been trying to understand it from a long time. It's like my mind never went to that about the water thing. So now you are also a leadership coach in the business organizations, in the dental organizations.
Correct.
Yeah. So you always say that making the complex simple. So what does that actually look like in practice, and why do so many leaders get it wrong?
I think the best way to look at it in practice is you should, whenever you're dealing with humans, That's the hardest thing. That's the problem with dentistry. You're dealing with humans. You always want to take off your shoes and put on the shoes of the others, and really understand what's their perspective, how they're going to deal with that, how that information is going to be interpreted. How are they going to react with that information you give them? And I think when you always do that, you're kind of thinking, how am I going to relay this to them? I think the best way to look at it is you always want to be more interested than interesting. It's great to quote facts and tell things like that, but if you have those conversations, you think about how this information is going to help their life, hurt their life, impact their life, and really think through what's the best way to explain that. And then I think a lot of it's just breaking it down to, if you're going to explain this to a 3-year-old, how would you explain it? Especially in dentistry, we've all sat in, an operatory where, someone explains a treatment plan to you. If it's in a lot of layman's terms and a lot of doctor talk, patients don't understand it. If you break it down to the complex, simple of how you explain it to a 3-year-old, patients get it. And then they have a lot greater opportunity to accept treatment instead of walking out confused.
We should go on their level to explain the things instead of coming from a specialized viewpoint. We have to go to the, as you said, the patient's point of view, so that they can understand, and we need to connect with their emotions as well, for to get a yes from the patient for the treatment. Like,
Absolutely, I think that's the best way to go about it. I look at it like in what I do on our side, on the vendor side, is sales. Nobody likes to be sold what they love to buy, but they're going to buy on their terms. And same thing for a patient sitting in a chair. A patient's going to accept a treatment for their terms. They have to understand what the problem is, how we're going to fix that. If you get into way too many details of how the procedure works and what's going to happen, you're going to confuse them, and they're probably going to leave and not accept treatment. But if you can just explain to them, this is what you're presented with. If you don't accept treatment, this is probably the road you're going down. This is how we're going to accomplish it. This is what it's going to look like. They have a lot greater opportunity to say yes. And then probably the other really tough thing we do in dentistry is we don't make things affordable. It's usually not about the cost; it's about the affordability. And the closer a treatment plan is to a mortgage payment, the less the patient's going to say yes. The closer it is to probably a card payment, or more importantly, a cell phone payment, the greater opportunity they have to say yes. But if you can explain to them what's going to happen, why it's happening, what we're going to do to get them out of the pain or the issue they have, and how we're going to make this affordable for them, there's a lot greater chance patients are going to say yes.
that is true. Like, we have to get to the patient's level, and I had a guest, Angie Drenick, on my podcast, and she was also telling about the same lines, that before asking, like telling the cost, you need to say what are the payment terms that you have, and or make them as easy as possible for the patients to say yes.
Absolutely.
So you have led across dental, medical, and pharmaceutical devices as well. So what is it about leadership that travels everywhere, and what is unique about leading in dentistry?
I think leadership is leadership to some extent. You're dealing with people, like I said in the very beginning. Especially for a practicing owner, if they didn't have to deal with people, it would be great. But I think in dentistry we hate the word sales, but people sell every day. A dentist has to sell themselves in the morning of why they're going to get up and go to a business that a lot of patients don't really like to go to, don't really want to accept treatment. So you're selling yourself of why you chose dentistry, why you want to go in the profession. We hear way too much that a lot of dentists are surveyed and said they wish they chose a different profession. I believe dentistry is the greatest profession to be in. If you can help people and you can remind yourself in the morning, but you're selling yourself why you're going to the practice, why you're going to help people, then you got to turn around and sell your team. Your team has to be your number one customer, not the patients. But if you can sell your team on what we do every day, what our vision and mission is, how we're going to help people, how we're going to protect them and make their lives better as a team, helping those patients, you just have to sell them every single day on why they need to show up. And then you're getting to your patients. If you take care of your team, the team's going to take care of the patients. But we're always talking to our patients about this is why you need to come on a more consistent basis. This is why you need to accept treatment. If you don't, this is the road we're going to be going down. We don't want to see that. So we haven't even left the morning huddle, and we've been selling all day long. But like we said before, you have to have conversations with people, explain to them, and let them decide. A patient always has the right to say no. It's their body. But I think the more we can do that, the better it is. But I think a lot of it's just figuring out people. What's their dream? What's their mission? What's their vision? What's their personal definition of success? And I think the more you have those conversations with them, and you can realize we need to coach everybody probably individually. It's not like we're treating people. We're going to treat them a little different, but we're not treating anyone unfairly. Everybody needs a little bit type of coaching. Everyone needs a little bit type of conversation. Everyone's going to need a little different type of follow up. But I think when you really figure out the individual in front of you, what makes them tick, and how we can get them to whatever their vision, mission, dream is for themselves, the happier those people are going to be, the more they're going to want to see others around them happy. So I think that's a lot of what leadership is about, is understanding your team's your number one customer, what's going to help them, what are the obstacles we can take out of their way to make their lives easier and better. And at the end of the day, if we do that, especially for an owning dentist, if you're able to look at your team as your number one customer and you take care of your team, they're going to take care of the patients and the communities that those patients live in.
That is true. Like dentist is a team sport, and
It is.
the first experience they have when they enter your dental practice is with the front desk, and it is as important for the front desk to be at the same page as the doctor. Like many a times, patients gel well with the front desk than the doctor, and they return back because of them. So I think like leading team is an art, and not everybody can do it. If a small dental practice and who is under real pressure, and you want that practice owner to steal directly from how elite high performing teams are built, then what would you say to them?
I think the best way to probably look at that is the dentists that I know that are the most successful is they excel at the soft skills. They excel at building teams, operating teams, doing that. It's not really about the clinical aspect of things. You have to be a good clinician to be able to treat patients. But at the end of the day, patients vote with their feet. Patients don't know a good crown from a bad crown. If there's a great margin or a poor margin, they don't understand what a CEREC is. They don't understand if you sent it to a lab or you made it in house and 3D printed it. They don't understand that, but they know how you made them feel, and so does your team. So if you can make your team feel like they're the number one customer, they're going to want to come to work every day. They're going to want to see the practice be successful. They're going to want to see the patients get healthier. They're going to want to, communicate and talk to the patients. So I think the more you can kind of understand that side of the soft skills of the business, you're going to do incredible. The money's going to follow. It is a small business. It has to make money to run and maintain. But the greater you are at the soft skills, the greater you're going to be as a clinician to help people. You're going to help your team be successful. You're going to help your patients be healthier and successful. You're going to help the community be healthier and successful. So I always think that's the best way to go about it. And I have conversations with younger dentists coming out of school all the time. I always tell them, the number one thing you got to do in the very beginning is choose mentorship over money. The money's going to follow. The mentorship is going to make you a stronger clinician down the road, and that's really where you're probably going to develop those soft skills versus the clinical skills. But like I said, I know great DSOs out there. I know poor DSOs. But on the flip side, I know great private practices and I know really poor private practices. Patients vote with their feet. We need all different types. And really what we need is true access to care. So we need all the different opportunities of insurances, of forms of dentistry. And at the end of the day, the patients are going to vote with their feet. And they're going to show up where they feel like they got the best care, and we're really taken care of.
That is good, and also depends upon the people in your team. And you have developed 30 president club winners and 6 rookies of the year. What I think it's all about the person as well. So, what do you look for in a hire that never shows up on a resume? How do you select your
Yeah,
team?
I do probably interviewing a little unconventional than others. I always tell people my job today is to talk you out of position because at face value it seems really simple. Most of life is simple, but then it's complex, and that's our job as leaders is to make the complex simple. But I think a lot of it is the individual in front of you. It's really figuring out what makes that person tick. What is their mission? What is their vision? What are their dreams? Where do they want to go in life? How can we help them get there? Versus what's their background, what's their skill set. The most of the clinical and a lot of that stuff can be taught of the teams inside. But what makes that person tick? Are they a we minded person or are they I minded person? Do they want to be on part of a team? Do they want to help out? That's a lot of the stuff that you're not going to see on a resume, but that all comes out of communication, the questions you ask. And a lot of the questions I usually typically ask are, do they have a growth mindset? Do they have a we mindset? Do they want to be part of a team? Dentistry is part of a team. I can tell you for most of the championships you see in sports, most of the championships you see in business, most of the championship teams that I've been a part of, a lot of times the A players are the A players. The high performing people are the high performing people. They're going to be great, but where most championships are won are with the B players. One team has better B players than the other team. which means they're always striving to get better. They have that we mindset. They have that growth mindset that they want to do that. If you have a team full of all high performing players, they're probably going to be fighting with each other and not really want to be team players. So I think what you're always looking for is who wants to be a part of a team, who wants to build something above and beyond what is normal, and who's a high performer. I think, Nick Saban, who was the coach of Alabama college football and a lot of other teams, said it best. High performing people don't like to hang around mediocre performing people, and vice versa. Mediocre performing people don't want to hang around high performing people. So a lot of it is really just finding out who wants to be a part of a team, who wants to go above and beyond and do greater things. Those are the people you want. I think we've all been on teams where someone is kind of that weak link or that cancer patient or that toxic patient, however you want to describe it. And once that person is finally removed from that situation, you can see the whole dynamic. You can see the air change in the room. You can see the team change, and everybody wants to look out and do things for each other. So it's about building a team, and if you can perfect that on the soft side of the skills. You can do great in anything, in any specialty, in any walk of life.
That is true. And do you think greatness is coachable in a person? Like, if a person is one type, can you coach them to be a second version of them? Or is it something just innate?
I think it can always be coached. It can always be developed. It can all be pulled out in a stronger mode. I mean, there are people that are, like I said, are going to be that toxic person and you're probably not going to be able to coach that person. In those situations, you're best helping them seek excellence elsewhere. But I think a lot of players, in sports, a lot of times I talk about sports. You look at Michael Jordan, who's probably the best basketball player in my opinion ever. He is the GOAT. He wasn't the greatest player in the beginning because it's all about I. It wasn't about the team. It wasn't about we. He interacted with Phil Jackson, and he's a different person and goes on to win 6 championships and really push people to their limits. But he was doing it for the betterment of the team. So he was looking for those people who you'd want on a team, and that's a lot of those B players. You look at a lot of the championships they won. It wasn't Michael making the winning shot every single time. A lot of times it was the B players, but he built that team. He bought into the concept that Phil Jackson had as a coach. So I think you can really enhance and find those people. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a yes and a no question. There are people that you could coach them every day, and they just have no interest in changing. They have an I mindset. They're kind of toxic. You may not be able to get those people to see differently or act and interact with others differently. But there's a lot of B and A players that you can take to the next level just by working with them, coaching them, developing them, really figuring out what makes them tick. It can dramatically change the game. So unfortunately, the answer is a little bit of both.
It really depends upon the person's inner self about if they are coachable or not, rather than on the coach.
Yeah, it's hard to help somebody that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
As a leader, you can't want it more than them. You're really looking for those people that want to get better. And when they want to get better and they want to accept coaching, they want to accept development, they want to improve lives, and more importantly, they want to improve the lives around them. I'm a big believer we're the average of the 5 people we hang around. If you're hanging around people that are toxic, negative, unfortunately, that's probably the environment you're going to live in. If you live under the people that don't live under scarcity, live under abundance, and they want to see everyone get better, that's where things get better. I mean, there's not one dental practice in the U.S. that can handle every single patient. There's probably not one dental practice in most communities that can handle every single patient. So if you realize we're all in this together, really just trying to make the whole industry better, trying to make patients' lives better, that's truly what you want. And unfortunately, the dentist down the street, down the hall, the next building over, the next county over, the next state over is not your competition. Your competition is probably the new car, the iPhone, the Disney trip. That's your competition.
Mhm.
That's what I said. You have to be able to make the complex simple, explaining what they presented with today, how we can help them, and how we can make it affordable. Because that's what the auto industry does well. That's what Apple does well. That's what Disney does well. And that's why they're successful.
Do you think like team building and the leadership skills they differ from the DSOs and independent practices, or do independent practices have the
Yeah,
pitch?
no, that's a great question. I don't think it's different. I think we spend a lot of time in dentistry, like I said. The private practices want to bash the DSOs. The DSOs want to bash the private practice. Everyone thinks someone's out to get better. Like I said, we're all in this together. Patients are going to find their dental home and meet with their feet. Whoever makes them happy and whoever they think they're getting great service from and care from, that's where they're going. And most of that is based on how did you make them feel? less than how did you clinically treat them. And I see it all the time. Like I said, I know great DSOs, I know poor DSOs, I know great private practice, I know poor private practices. At the end of the day, it is at the individual office level. Can do you have a leader that's willing to step up? Do you have a leader that's willing to lead people? Are you going to, build that vision and mission? Are you going to figure out, what makes people tick? Are you willing to build a team? Are you willing to build the soft skills, not only in yourself, but in the team, so they can achieve greatness and all get on the same link? Most teams are as strong as their weakest link. So if you can really work with that team and get everyone to understand what is their job in the practice, how can they perform that job the best, and kind of almost like what happens if I don't do my job and everyone else does, we're going to let a lot of people down. And I don't see any difference in the DSO space, the private practice space. It's still dealing with people on the teams. It's dealing with people who are the leaders, and it's dealing with people who are the patients.
That is true, kind of. It depends upon. So, Steve, like you have been a sales rep when you started at the beginning, and you have been a C-level executive now. So, what do you think, like the high-performing sales rep gel with the dentist? Like, if they want to buy something.
I think what you're looking for is a partner. You're not looking for a vendor. You're looking for someone who's really looking out for your business. I think the world has changed. I think it's no longer who you know, it's who knows you. So I think a lot of practice owners, especially the younger practice owners now, they probably have a chat bot, a Claude bot, a Copilot bot sitting as their board of director, as one of their founders and leaders. And they're asking them, if they want to do something, that they're asking them, what should I do to control my and I think the more you're out actively talking to people, the more you're promoting what your organization does, the more you're promoting your own personal brand, the more you're having podcasts and awesome conversations like today, that allows AI to find you and have those conversations. And then it's really just partnering with people that you want to work with. Not everyone's going to be your customer. Not everyone should be your partner in business. I still truly believe the number one predictor of anyone's success is who they decide to partner with, both personally and professionally. That is going to determine their effectiveness in the world and in their life and the success they're going to achieve. And like I said, I think we're the average of the five people you hang around. So, if you're building your business as a practice owner, you need to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people you know, like, and trust, and make sure these are people you want to work with. You asked about the interview question. I think it goes the same for doctors when they're interviewing people to work with. If you couldn't sit in a car ride with someone for 5 hours, you probably don't want to partner with them in business. You probably don't want to have them on your team. Or if you were sitting in nowadays at a delayed flight for 2, 3, 4 hours, and you couldn't have a conversation in the waiting for that plane to take off, it's probably not people you want to partner with. But we want to have diversity. We want to have different ways of thinking. We want to accept people's ways of thinking. No one has all the answers, but a lot of it's just does that individual want to partner with you and help you make their business stronger, which obviously is going to make their business stronger. That's truly what you're looking for. You're not looking for the person that's going to sell you something once and it's probably not what you needed and you're never going to see them again. There's people out there like that, unfortunately, in the world. But you're really looking for a partner, not a vendor.
What are the mistakes dentists are making when they're buying equipment or an AI software?
I think a lot of times it's like anything in life. Everyone's looking for the magic bullet. They're looking for what's easy. We choose our own every day. I think a lot of it is you have to think through as a practice owner of, why do I need this piece of equipment? Is it going to change my life? Is it going to speed up the procedures I do, make them more cost effective? Is it going to make them professionally better for the patients? And then think through, what are my options? And really do your due diligence of making sure, like I said, these are the people I want to partner. These are the products that are going to, help advance my practice to the next stage. Like I said, you always have to remember that patients don't understand a lot of what happens in a practice. They just know the start, what they came in, and how they left, and how people made them feel. So you really need to evaluate, what is this product? Which one is the best for me? Who's the organization that's going to make it easy to buy from and easy to work with? And I think that's where you really want to lean in and do that. I think the more you talk to your peers as well, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, what's working for them. But then you always have to make up your own mind. You want your practice to be run your way. And that goes for everything from the teams to the products we use, to the equipment we use, to how we run the practice.
Even if a dentist finds something, like if they invest in equipment which is of lakhs of dollars or thousands of dollars. I think the first thing they have to think about is how to market it and how to show its value to the patient before uh, and the team, to the patient
Yeah,
and the
I
team.
mean, obviously, your patients aren't going to have that dental IQ that a dentist, a practicing owner would have from going to dental school. But I think you said, like I said, a lot of it is building those soft skills, being able to have the conversations. But I think one thing you said is very important is you have to sell your team first.
Yeah.
As I said in that example, you got to sell yourself first of why you need this piece of equipment, how it's going to change the practice, what is it going to help us out with, and then you got to sell your team. This is why we're going with this. This is the why behind it. This is what it's going to do for patients. This is why we want to proactively talk about this type of treatment or procedure or piece of equipment, and how it's not only going to, change the doctor's life, it also has to change the team's life. Does it make the team's lives easier? Does it add to them of being able to speed up the procedure time, make it less expensive for the patient, better outcomes for the patient, less, you know, side effects for the patient. And if they can do that, then it gets a little easier to have those conversations with patients and have those conversations. I mean, almost every dentist I know has a closet or an extra operatory that's full of stuff they bought once, because a lot of times they're looking for the magic bullet. Unfortunately, there isn't a magic bullet. A lot of life is doing, if you can get really disciplined and really consistent at the basic blocking and tackling and show up every day, you're going to be more successful than 90% of the people you interact with. So a lot of it's just figuring out what's best for your practice, what's best for your team, and ultimately at the end of the day, how is that going to be best for your patients and change the outcomes that they receive in that care of the practice.
That is true, Steve. In fact, it's like if you want to make the team adopt it first, because majority of the reason something fails and something, as you said, like dentist buys it, it doesn't use it, even a software, it's because of the resistance from the team. They don't want to learn new things, and this is the only way that we have done. So, how do you manage the change in the team? Like, there's always one member who says, "This is we have done it always like this." So how will you manage that person?
Yeah, I think that's the number one killer of any business. This is the way we've always done it. I mean, you can look at so many examples, whether it's Blockbuster, whether it's Kodak, whether it's Sears. There is just way too many examples. This is the way we've always done it. That's where I said you're looking for people with that growth mindset that realize that the way we do it today may not be the way we do it tomorrow. If we continue the way we're doing it today, we might be out of business because things are going to perfect, things are going to change. You brought up AI. What happened in AI yesterday is going to be massively different than what happens in today. But then again, what happens today is going to be massively different than what happens tomorrow. You want to be advancing. You want to have that growth. I mean, we're all like trees. We're either growing or dying. So are you trying to get better? Are you trying to help your team understand what's going on? But, the implementation process is where a lot of that, the roads hit that. But a lot of it happens before that. Like you said, you got to sell your team on why this is important, why we're making this change, how it's going to help their lives. Is it going to help their lives? Maybe it's not. A lot of times we go to a conference and we learn about a new skill set or a new procedure. We don't bring our team with us. We come back to the next lunch and learn or morning huddle. Everyone's looking at their feet because everyone knows if we don't make eye contact, we don't say anything. In 2 weeks, it's back to business as usual, which means you didn't get the buy-in of your team. If you really think this is going to change the way you practice dentistry, well, then you need to explain that to your team. This is what I see. This is a vision. You probably should have brought them with them to the training so they can hear about it, buy into it, understand it. That's how you see the greatest success. But like I said, that is understanding the soft skills of life, of really understanding what it takes to build a team, what it takes to be successful. And it can't be, it's going to make the practice owner more money. There have to be reasons of why this is going to help massively with our patient care. And this is the reason why we're doing it. And I think, that's where you also have to surround yourself with the right people that want that growth, want to see that vision come through, want to see that mission come through. And a lot of it's just building your own personal brand and instructing them to kind of build their own personal brand.
Like in the age of AI, as you said, like everything is changing so fast, and that adaptability is much more needed now than it was before. Like before, it was like for 1 to 2 years at least you could guarantee there was something, not there's no new thing coming out. But in the age of AI and the software development and all, it's going way too fast, and people need to adapt to it. So, and coming to the question, like, what do you think about the front desk AI? Like, it's a booming thing right now in the industry.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's one of those things where we can perfect things a lot better. We have to be open to this is the way we've always done it. There's probably better ways to do things. I think everybody that is going to listen to this conversation has experienced this, whether it's in a dental practice, a medical practice, a hairdresser, you name it. You go down the list. A lot of times we walk into an establishment, an organization, and especially in dentistry, the front desk person, who should never be called the front desk person because they're not a piece of furniture. They're an essential part of that community, of that office, and they're really the backbone that's making that thing hum. But a lot of times, they're overworked. They're doing way too many responsibilities. So a lot of times they're on the phone, verifying benefits for a patient. They're checking out a patient. There's also a patient that wants to check in. There's a clinician hanging over their shoulder to figure out what's next, or what we're doing, and the phone's ringing again. And we've all experienced that. Sit down and I'll help you as soon as I can. Well, what if you could take away a lot of that, and explain to them the why behind that? This is going to make your life easier. It's not designed to take your job. It's so when a patient walks in, you don't have a phone in one hand. You're not checking somebody in and checking somebody out. You're not talking to a clinician about the next procedure. What if we could have it where when you walked in, that new patient walked in the front door, you could stand up, look them eye to eye, shake their hand, explain to them what's going to happen. They're in the right place. We're really going to help them. That is how you change the experience of that patient. That's how you have them vote with their feet to come back here. But I think right now with AI, everyone's afraid, AI is going to take every single job in the world. That's not the case. I think it's really designed to, how do we make people's lives easier? How do we make the jobs easier? How do we make the experience better? How do we change that patient experience? And the more people can understand the why behind what you're adding to the practice, why you're adding it to the practice, then you get people at ease. But if you don't really explain why, we're just going to this because it's going to help out. Well, of course, people are going to think, well, this is going to take away my job. I don't like this. I don't think this works. And unfortunately, we hear that in dentistry all the time. This is never going to work, and a lot of times it's this wouldn't happen. This won't work in our practice. This won't work in our town. This won't work in our community. This won't work in the practice we're in. A lot of times they're just nervous. They're scared, and unfortunately, nobody explained the why to them. Why we're making this change, how it's going to make their lives easier, how it's going to make the patient experience better. And when you explain that, then people can join and want to get on board. But like I said, you're not including them in the mission and the vision of the practice. You're really just looking at them as an employees who are exchanging time for money, which is never going to be a great patient experience, and it's never going to be a great home that someone wants to live in, whether it be a clinician, a team member, or a patient.
That is where like front desk is the sales team of your office, be it any office. It's the first experience of the patient is with the front desk, and if you take away a lot of admin tasks from them, as you said, we can focus on the patient experience who is right in front of us. People wouldn't mind like booking an appointment on messages or on AI, and especially with the new generation, they are used to AI, so they will expect some kind sort of AI in their journey to the dentist as well. So, what does a smooth rollout of an AI front desk actually look like?
I think a lot of it is, like I said, it's really selling that mission. Of first, you got to decide where you want your practice to go. Some practices, their patient population may not go for a full blown AI receptionist. Others would. So first, it's understanding your market and where do you want your practice to go. Like I said, then it's really explaining to your team, this is why we're going to make this change. This is what we're going to do, and then it's involving them in the rollout process of how we should roll this out. What should it look like? Who should be involved? And I think the more you can do that, you're going to have a lot more people willing to accept it and willing to see the vision of where we're trying to grow and where we're trying to get to. And I think if you can do that, they're going to want to join part of that journey and be a part of that journey to get there. And what they'll realize is this is going to make their lives easier. It's not taking away their job. It's designed to help them. But if you don't explain that all through the process of the why and how we're going to get there, it's pretty hard to figure that out. Some people have that in them where they can see kind of where things are going and how that's going to take place. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. So if you don't help them with that process, they can't envision where we're trying to get to, and they have to live it. But a lot of times they're going to try and block it because it's just different. It's like if you brush your teeth with your right hand and tomorrow everyone's going to brush their teeth with their left hand, it's going to feel different. So you want to ease as much of that process as humanly possibly, and then you got to lean on your partners, the people that are involved in the AI, of making sure they're helping you with that role. explaining to them what the vision is, what the doctor's vision is, how we're going to get there, what we see with others, what's the end stage. If we fight it, this is what we also see. So I think you want everybody and anybody involved of how do we roll out that process to make it as seamless. And like I said, a lot of it comes down to, once again, making that complex simple. Of this is why we're doing it. This is where we're going. This is how it's going to happen. And then you're going to put people at ease to help them with that process.
Thank you, Steve, for telling, like, instilling the thing that we need all the people on board for anything to happen in the practice. So, Steve, like, you have coached so many people, but what is the best piece of coaching advice that you have received?
I think the best coaching advice I've ever received, like I said, I think a lot of it is just understanding how do you make the complex simple, and who do you surround yourself with. If you want to get better and grow and develop yourself, it's all about mindset and who you surround yourself with. If you're listening to the right things, interacting with the right people, trying to get consistently disciplined at the basic everyday blocking and tackling, you're going to be very successful. But human nature is to fight a lot of that. So you have to really push yourself to do that. I think that's the best coaching advice I've ever received.
And what would you give to a clinic owner, one leadership habit every practice owner should start?
I think a lot of it is team first. Really understanding that your team is going to drive everything. Like I said a little bit ago, make sure you're more interested than interesting. Making sure you're finding out what makes your team tick, what makes your people tick. Where do they want to go in life? How can you help them get there? And unfortunately, it may not be with your practice for the rest of their lives. But I think if you build that community and you're building that personal brand, you're going to have people at the waiting door to take over any position you would ever need refilled. We all know practices like that, where someone is a phenomenal leader. They're building people, they're doing that, and they have waiting lists for every single position. The other thing they do extremely well is they build a personal brand online. And like I said, AI finds them, people find them, they know exactly what they're like. And when they walk into that practice, they already know, like, and trust the clinicians and the practice owners.
And that is true. Like, in this day and age, having a personal brand is what will separate you from the generic ones, and branding your clinic as well.
Absolutely.
So, the person starting on the leadership journey or the personal branding journey, where should they start? What is the first step they should take?
I think just figuring out where you want to go. What do you want your brand to look like? What is your personal definition of success? What's your vision? What's your mission? And then a lot of it's just being you. You don't. We've all met someone before that we thought was somebody, and then we meet them in real life, and that's not the person. So you got to be true and authentic to yourself. And then you just got to get out there and have those conversations. You're never going to be ready for anything in life. You just got to do it. Unfortunately, when you start building that personal brand journey of posting on LinkedIn, putting videos out, whatever you want to do, whether it's TikTok, whether it's in YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is, just start doing it. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The more confident you're going to feel, the more you're going to enjoy it, the more you're going to see the brand grow. And whatever you do today, a year from now, you wish you could start over, and a year from now, you wish you could start over. But people ask me all the time, what's your greatest regret in probably like dentistry? And it's, I didn't start building a personal brand when I entered 24 years ago. I started later. I tell people all the time, start today. It is going to make life easier. And like I said, the world's changed. It's no longer who you know, it's who knows you. And AI is never going to find you if you're not out there building that personal brand. That goes for you as an individual. It goes for the organization you work for. Personal brands, professional brands. They all work together these days.
Is there any resource or book that you would recommend?
I, th- I mean, I could. There's probably too many to name. How to win how to win friends and influence people is one. I think a lot of it's figuring out. Who do you kind of relate with as a leader. You don't have to meet your mentors. Um, there is so much content out there, from either podcasts, talks, books, videos. There are so many ways to get out there and find the information. It's find a few people. If you're a dentist, it's find a couple dental podcasts where you really resonate with those. They have the right mindset, they have the right vision, they have the right leadership, and just consume as much as you can. If I'm not spending time with my friends or family, I probably have an AirPod in my ear and I'm listening to something, whether it's a dental podcast, a leadership podcast, those type things. I'm definitely a podcast junkie, but I think, you have to figure out, what do you like to read? Do you like to listen to the content? Can you train your brain on 2x where you can consume twice as much content? You have to find what works for you and what's going to make you happy, and more importantly, who you want to surround yourself with, to make you happy. Unfortunately, the world is full of a lot of scarcity. Dentistry is full of a lot of scarcity. So you're looking for the abundance minded people. The more you can consume and surround themselves. But I don't think there's one book. I don't think there's one person that's going to be able to help you. It's making sure you're getting a wide variety of people in the industry, of thought leaders in the industry, and then figuring out what works for you. And it's probably taken a little bit from different people, to build up what you want your vision and mission and personal brand to look like.
It's basically, take the best parts of everyone. Like you may not like a person for the complete individual they are, but everybody has some good and some bad. So taking good from everyone and inculcating in your personal life, that is going to change your life. Like get 1% better every day.
Yeah, I mean, one tip of advice I can give, and I've told my kids this for as long as I can remember, they can probably recite it, is, when you're at the party, go talk to the 4-year-olds and the 84-year-olds. The 4-year-olds, they're the best salespeople you ever meet in your life. They don't understand the word no. They're going to tell you exactly what half the time what they say is astonishing, but it's true and it's authentic and it's honest because they don't know any better. They haven't been corrupted yet of what society thinks you should be and what you should say and how you should be. So you'll have a phenomenal conversation with a 4-year-old. Then the 84-year-olds, unfortunately, they're on the back nine. They're looking at a different side of life. They're going to share with you their regrets of what they would do differently. Make sure you're taking the advice from both of them, of kind of the individuals that have their whole life in front of them. And unfortunately, the individuals that don't have the rest of their life in front of them, they have a short period of time, but they're going to give you some honest advice of what they wish they would have done differently. And I think you can learn a lot from both those individuals.
That is basically comes down to the connection with the people that that you have. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for your time. And what I have gathered from this conversation is that you don't build a winning practice by managing tasks. You build it by developing people. And when you get the right people, and almost everything follows.
Yep. Every business is, there's hardly any business you can find in the world that aren't people businesses. We are going to come into an age where, there could be $1 billion company run by AI and one person, but, those days aren't here today. It's about building a team around you, and sharing that vision and mission and really wanting to help people. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a gentleman by the name of Cameron Harold, but he runs the COO network. So it's a group of COOs that help support CEOs. And like he said, it's a little morbid, but like he always says, at the end of the day, none of us are getting out alive. And we're really, truly just walking each other home every day. So why not have a good time of it? So I think it's about surrounding yourself with great people. If people aren't people you want to associate with them, you don't have to say anything. Just don't associate with them. And find the people that make you happy, the people that are going to help grow and develop you, and don't let go of those people. But you constantly have to be looking for new people to help grow and develop you, because you also don't want to stay stagnant. Like I said in the very beginning, we're all like trees, we're either growing or dying. And the second one is not very good. So you always want to be growing, unfortunately, until the day you die.
That is like when you stop growing, that is you stop everything in your life. Thank you so much.